Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host this hour. And we are going to be joined by Doug Enyart. Doug is the Constitution Party's candidate coming up for the 8th District congressional seat vacated by Joanne Emerson. And so I'm going to skip my normal bullet points this morning because I wanted to make sure that we had as much time to chat with Doug as possible. Our goal is to try to capture and understand exactly where he stands on multiple issues. You know that we've been inviting all the different candidates on to participate with us, and so I felt it appropriate, since Doug has recently hit the press that he is the nominee for the Constitution Party, that he would be a viable candidate, and we would like to hear his opinions, his thoughts, and his policies going forward if he makes the seat to Washington. So good morning, Doug, and I appreciate you joining with us this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. How you doing?
I'm just doing great, thanks. I briefly met you the other night at the in Springfield at the Firearms Freedom Symposium, and I was glad to see you there. I thought that was a great opportunity for you to kind of get to know some of the constituency in this area as well. So.
I was pretty impressed by the symposium. Quite frankly, I thought I was going to a gun show. There's been a lot of gun shows. In fact, there's one here in Piedmont on this weekend. But then I got there and found out, oh, it's a symposium. They're talking. These people are just sitting in the seats. They're not out there buying guns or trading guns or anything like that.
Sure.
And I was impressed with the people who were there. They sat and a good many of them were packing.
Yeah.
They were all polite. Looked like they were all intent on what the speakers had to say. And those speakers, even though the keynote speaker didn't show up, he was snowed out.
Yeah.
I thought the speakers were wonderful.
Yep. Well, I don't know if you're familiar with Sheriff Mack, but he's been on our show a number of times. He is probably one of the most stalwart constitutional sheriff folks that I've ever met. And he really has a great platform out there. He's got a great history himself, having won that Supreme Court case. And he really is a valuable component in the constitutional sheriffs and peace officers fight to not only place themselves in the forefront and interpose themselves where necessary between, government run amok, whether that's state or federal, by the way, and the people. But he's a great spokesman for his mission, and I'm glad that he was able to make that. It's unfortunate Larry Pratt got stuck in Chicago in a snowstorm. And I'm sure he's wasn't none too happy about it himself, but sometimes that's just the way Mother Nature deals with us.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that Sheriff Mack has found another friend the other night.
Well, that's great. That's great.
I put him on my favorites list on both my main computers, and I'm telling my friends about him.
There you go. Hey, what I found interesting was that he's looking to hold his next Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Convention here in Missouri. And that's great because that will give our local folk, a lot of small towns or small counties, I should say, don't necessarily have the revenue resources to be able to send a sheriff to, some far off state and pay for airfare and hotels and all that kind of thing. But, if it were held in Missouri, we could probably swing a hotel room and pay for a few tanks of gas. So
sure. Yeah.
The beautiful part of that is that it'll really enable every sheriff every county sheriff in the state of Missouri to attend. So I'm really grateful that he's looking forward to doing that here.
I think we can make that happen.
Yeah. So, okay, I just want to kind of give a brief rundown on my understanding of who you are. You're an ex-U.S. Marine, and thank you for your service to our nation. And you have spent a career as a professional forester, and you're a member of the Constitution Party, obviously, and you've been elected from basically a pool of candidates that applied to the Constitution Party to be their candidate. As a Constitutional Party member, I'm pretty confident or pretty sure that you are a stalwart defender of that. And so if you don't mind just giving us a brief overview of your business experiences or history. I understand you're a small businessman as well, and that you would then we can kind of get into some of the topics and the issues and the questions of those things that are pertinent to our nation.
Okay. Yes. I am a professional forester. Got my degree in forest management from Humboldt State University out in North Coast California, deep in the heart of the redwoods. Mm-hmm. My first professional job was working for the Department of Conservation here in Missouri. I spent about a year in Rolla, and then about 9 years down here in Piedmont. And I just came to a point where I just didn't think that my job there was doing any good. It seems to me that really the state agency is kind of like a hamster on a wheel. They keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different outcome.
Sure.
So I just kind of got frustrated, and I thought, 15 million acres worth of forest land in the state. There's got to be some opportunity there in the private sector. So I wrote a business plan in 1998 and walked out the door.
There you go.
It was a wild ride for a while. It still is kind of interesting. As a private practitioner, not only do you get to be creative and innovative, you have to be.
Sure.
And that's part of the job that I like.
Well, you're now running for Congress, and so with that in mind, and you've not held public office before, right?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So with that in mind, I'd like to understand, and I'm sure my listeners are ears tuned to understand exactly where you stand on a few specific issues. And I should say a few enumerated in specific issues, but it's a fairly long list. If you don't mind, what I'd like to do is kind of run through that list. And if you can keep, just because of time constraints, if you can keep your answers to one or two sentences, or one word if that's all it calls for, just so that we can kind of grasp where you stand on a number of different issues. All right?
Okay.
Is that a fair way to?
That's fair. I would like to preface this with, I am a political novice. I'm just the guy down the street.
Sure.
So while I have opinions on practically everything, there are some things that get more of my attention than others.
Of course.
If you want to talk to me about pro-life, pro-family, yes.
Sure.
We'll definitely talk about that. Veterans,
I think
gun control. Yeah.
I think these are more issues surrounding the general topics or policies that are in the news on a daily basis that are things that our citizens have expressed concern about. Basically, what I've done is I've compiled a word list or a term or phrase list from our listenership who have said, hey, when you interview candidates, let's ask these questions. So let's start with a biggie: abortion. Your position or your stand on that?
I'm very much pro-life. I'm pro-life from the inception of life. As our technology moves forward, we learn more and more and more about when life actually begins and what is going on after conception. Just recently, there was a bill passed. I think it was in Arkansas that the governor vetoed that said basically they were going to prohibit abortion at the point at which the baby can feel pain, and I couldn't believe that he would veto that. So, answer your question, quick answer: I'm very much pro-life.
Sure. Okay. And by the way, my understanding is that if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Arizona that just passed one yesterday that does have those same prohibitions. So, how about for rape and incest? And I'm going to have to. You can hear music kicking off in the background. We're going to have a break in a second, so keep your answer brief if you can.
Okay, that's one that it's really hard for me to, really wrap my mind around it.
Sure.
If we're looking at it strictly from kind of the theoretical point of view, and so two wrongs don't make a right. Mm-hmm. That being said, I have empathy with the victim, and I would not. I certainly wouldn't be the first one to cast a stone.
Sure. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we can delve into this and dive into these issues a little bit more, and we'll run through this list as quickly as we can. You have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Doug DOUG _Enyart. We'll be back in just a moment, folks.
The area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry, your Class 3 dealer for automatic weapons and suppressors, including Gemtech and Huntertown, with a great selection of holsters, slings, magazines, and gun storage options. West Plains Pawn and Jewelry will also do special orders. With new arrivals every week, the area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry, 1713 West U.S. Highway 160, or shop online at westplainspawn.com.
From Bob Dylan to Whitney Houston to Alicia Keys, he has seen it all on the next Alan Colmes Show. From humble beginnings, he became one of the most powerful men in the music industry. Legend Clive Davis is here with a behind-the-scenes look at 5 decades in the business, plus what happens to your hard-earned dollars when you give them to charity on the next Alan Colmes Show.
Weekdays 9 to midnight, it's the Alan Colmes Show on the Ozarks Best News Talk, 107.1 The Point.
All right, we are back. We are joined with Doug Enyart. Doug is the Constitutional Party's candidate for the upcoming replacement of Joanne Emerson in the 8th District here in Missouri. And we're kind of running through some topics. We really only got through the first question, which was abortion. And sorry, but with background and a little bit of your history, that ate up our first segment. So what we'll do, I think, Doug, if this is all right with you, is we'll kind of run through this and we'll keep our answers brief and kind of to the point, so that we can kind of make sure that we're getting as much information as possible. Let's talk a little bit about your thoughts on Obamacare as a federal mandate.
I think this is completely unconstitutional when the executive branch of the federal government can reach down and say, you have to buy this service from this industry or we're going to fine you. And first they wanted to call it a fine, and then when it got into the Supreme Court they wanted to call it a tax because, well, that made it constitutional, they thought. But no, I'm completely against what the proverbial Obamacare, Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, I think, is the official name of it. So
okay.
I think it needs to be opposed by the states.
Kind of a separate but connected concept. Do you believe in the principles of nullification, that states have the right to nullify federal law by declaring them null and void on their face and then refusing to participate in a program? And we can use Obamacare as an example, but I can think of 100 others. But let's start with Obamacare, since that's the topic we're on. Do you believe that states have the right to nullify along the lines of the Jeffersonian principles of nullification?
Yes.
So the supremacy clause doesn't override the states' rights to nullify?
Absolutely not. The states are the boss. The states are the ones who delegated to the federal government certain authorities. As an employer, I can delegate a certain duty to an employee. If the employee does not perform adequately, I can take it back. So can the states.
Okay.
And there is precedent in this. Jefferson wrote the Kentucky Resolutions of 1798. James Madison, and I think he had something to do with writing the Constitution, wrote the Virginia Resolution of 1798.
Okay, so I'm just from what you're telling me in those key operative phrases, I'm it's very clear that you are a student of nullification, and to me that's a good thing. So,
yes.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about drones. One, the policy of utilizing drones in a non-armed format or manner in the United States of America domestically, and then our foreign policy relating to that, and our domestic policy in light of Eric Holder's treasonous statement to the press yesterday that he believes that he has the constitutional authority to give the president the okay to do that, to kill Americans on American soil with an armed drone attack in a hypothetical scenario.
Absolutely not. No, this is again. It's a violation of the Constitution. It is another grandiose effort on part of the executive branch to expand its power and control and to centralize control in its own hands. they think that just because they write some secret memo that they don't even want to share with us, giving themselves the authority to do something like this makes it okay. What happened?
Well, Nancy Pelosi went further than that. She actually stated yesterday that not only should he have the authority to kill Americans on American soil, but he should have the authority to keep it secret. I kid you not.
I didn't hear that one, but my gosh, has she read the Constitution?
Apparently not. Okay, let's talk a little bit about executive orders. I'm assuming, by the way, from your answer that drones are running. Let me quantify that and go back to drones for a quick second, if I can. Missouri has a new legislative piece out there which basically bar drones from being used within the state of Missouri. And I recognize that you're running for a national seat, but just bear with me for a moment and just ride with me on this. That we can ban drones within the state of Missouri, and that they cannot be used in a manner or for information gathering without a probable cause warrant. And I actually want to take that one step further. I want to say that if you're going to pilot a drone or utilize a drone within the borders of Missouri, that I want you to not only have to register it, but register it with a public database and file a flight plan for every flight that you do. And furthermore, retain everything that you capture, whether it's GPS coordinates, whether it's photographs, whether it's video. Maintain that in a public database so that, according to the law, you can obtain relief in the courts if you find that of course, without the proof, how do you obtain relief, right? So I want the relief housed in a place where people have access to it for an unlimited period of time. And my goal, or my thought on it is, if you're going to do this, if you're going to utilize drones, I want you to do the same thing you want me to do. I want you to register your drone like you want me to register my gun.
What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
One would think.
Yeah.
Would you propose a national policy that would ban drone use in the United States without or the capture of information without a probable cause warrant?
Without a probable cause warrant, yes.
Okay. Executive orders. We've seen and executive orders have been used from George Washington to the present, and my concern, of course, with the executive orders that we're seeing issued now are orders that can literally take the entire communications and all communications networks down, internet kill switch type things, where literally the government can take ownership and control of all networks, public, private, or otherwise, and based on a declaration of an emergency. And those types of executive orders, which I think are far-reaching and have far greater impact than the original principle of an executive order, which is to say this is a law that stands, and I'm ordering you to enforce it. Your thoughts on executive orders?
Well, my thoughts on executive orders are similar to my thoughts on all the czars. This is, again, the effort on part of the executive to centralize and gather control into a very small place called the presidency. And that's not what the Republic is about. Sure. The Republic is about checks and balances. It's about citizen participation and the right to petition the government for grievances. So executive orders and all the czars, this is a power grab.
Okay. Let's talk about three issues that are in the news. Benghazi, Fast and Furious, Eric Holder and the Department of Justice in general, and his specific issue, and you kind of addressed that with the drones issue. I have a major problem with Mr. Holder, and frankly, I'm almost appalled that our Congress has not moved to have him removed forcibly from office by law. And this issue of Benghazi and Fast and Furious are, of course, Benghazi is not as tightly tied to Eric Holder as Fast and Furious. Let's deal with that issue. Eric Holder and Fast and Furious first.
Eric Holder lost me a long time ago, pretty much when he was put into his current position as Attorney General, when he said that we are a nation of cowards where race is concerned. I may be on the wrong side of some of my constituents here, but my family fought on part of the North. Some of them were killed, some were wounded. They were taken prisoners of war, and he lost me there. Okay. So Eric Holder and Fast and Furious.
Fast and Furious.
I just where's the transparency again? We were told that this government was going to be transparent, and we're still fighting to get the full set of information. And we've got a government that's not even playing by its own rules.
Right.
Who in their right mind would think it's okay to set up these straw buys and send these weapons to the drug cartels in Mexico? That's okay?
Yeah. Well, they put people in jail for that.
Yeah, I think a Marine was put in jail recently by Mexico, and he was just trying to do it legitimately.
Well, actually, he was just trying to cross their border and on his way through their country to another country.
He wasn't trying to hide anything. He
Right.
openly said, "Hey, I'm bringing a shotgun with me to go hunting."
Eric Holder's been found to be in contempt, both civilly and criminally. And I guess my question to you is, as a new member of the House, would you be willing to go in there and file for removal from office? File for his removal from office and put it up on the floor for a vote.
Yes, and since he's been found, it might be that he needs to have charges filed against him and be taken to court.
Okay. Fast and Furious. I'm sorry, I apologize. Benghazi. And this is not related to Eric Holder. This is related to President Obama. Benghazi and the State Department and that whole boondoggle.
Benghazi, yes. Again, where's the transparency? Why is it taking so much time? Why didn't they just come out and tell us everything that they knew right at the get-go? And who? I'm still wanting to know. I'm sure your listeners are wanting to know who made the decision to try and pin this on some homemade movie that guy put together in California.
Well, we also know that there were a number of witnesses who were actually injured. I believe the number is somewhere in the range of 15 to 20 individuals who were injured and wounded and were flown off to hospitals, and yet the State Department still, to this day, refuses to release the names and or the locations of where those individuals are so that they can be brought before a committee and put under oath and questioned as to what their experience and as witnesses to what their experience was and what actually happened. And that is a State Department prohibition that is being imposed on Congress. Now, if Congress doesn't have the right to question the Department of State about something as important and as critical as this, I fear that we now live in a monarchy and are no longer basically in a republic.
Yes, and we've talked about the executive branch centralizing power on several different topics now, and you're saying the same thing.
Okay, let's talk about the Keystone Pipeline. Are you familiar with that one?
I'm somewhat familiar with it.
Okay, so the Keystone Pipeline is supposed to come down from Canada, and we've got the environmentalists and the administration kind of doing everything they can to block it. Your thoughts on whether or not we should have the Keystone Pipeline?
We should definitely have the Keystone Pipeline. It's a good plan, and we need the petroleum, and it can be done safely. There's all kinds of safeguards, probably too many in my opinion, but there's all kinds of safeguards in place. All we have to do is follow the rules and put it in correctly.
Let's just hit on, because we're going to have a break coming up in just a moment. How about term limits? Term limits not only for, on the federal side. Do you believe in that representatives and senators should be term limited out?
At this point in time, I would say that I support it. I have supported it. One of the things I do is I listen to history things and read history, and they were talking about some of the early statesmen and how long they served, and so then when I look at some of the early statesmen, all the time they spent in office, like John Quincy Adams,
sure.
62 years. I have to wonder, is it really the right direction?
Okay. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll hit on a few more bullet points, and we'll try to move it forward. Thank you so much. Just stick with us for a minute. We'll be right back, folks. You're listening to America's Voice Now.
Fox News Radio. I'm Chris Foster. A threat from North Korea to the United States, with the United Nations Security Council about to vote on new sanctions over its nuclear and missile programs.
North Korea's foreign ministry saying it'll exercise what it calls its right to a preemptive nuclear strike because the United States is pushing for nuclear war anyway. North Korea set off a nuclear device last month, but is thought unlikely yet to be able to put one on a long-range missile.
Fox News Radio's Alistair Wanklin. Fewer people on unemployment.
Initial jobless claims for benefits fell by 7,000 last week to 340,000. Meanwhile, the trade deficit widened in January as oil imports jumped and exports dropped.
Fox Business Network's Diane Macedo, that trade gap, $44.4 billion. Subaru recalling more than 47,000 cars and SUVs with remote starters because the engines can start on their own if the key fob's dropped. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Visit our outstanding sponsors, West Plains Pawn, located on Route 160, about a mile past Walmart on the right-hand side. West Plains Pawn can be found on the web at westplainspawn.com. You can also reach them via telephone at 417-256-3000. The battery station at 303 Washington Avenue, right off the square in West Plains. They can be reached via telephone at 417-257-7799. They can also be found on the web at batterystation.com. My friends at Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance. Brian can be reached at 870-492-4030, and he's located at 3225 Route 62, 1/2 mile east of Walmart in Mountain Home. Make sure that you visit our friends over at Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard in West Plains. They have an outstanding lunch special buffet. You can have salad as well as pizza and other pasta, so you can have something tasty and something healthy. Bill Stone over at Stone Construction at 2930116. Bill Stone does remodeling, custom and new construction, light commercial, farm work, pretty much the gamut. If you're interested in doing some kind of a new project, make sure that you give Bill Stone at Stone Construction an opportunity to bid on that job. And my dear friend, Mary, over at Chantilly's Artisan Bakery, number 2 Evans Arcade, right off the square in West Plains. She can be reached via telephone at 255-2253. She's got the best damn bakery in 100 miles. And thanks so much to our phone line sponsor, Jason over at Wits End Classic Barbershop. You can call us on the Wits End Classic Barbershop hotline. He is on the square in West Plains. Excellent opportunity for you to get your hair cut. Get over there and visit.
When their 5-year-old pestered them to let them play the game, Zombies versus the Ninja, Greg and Sharon Kitchen's first instinct was to say, "No, I don't think so, sweetie." Danny said he was offered the chance to buy more ammunition, and more ammunition, and more ammunition. Danny's game-playing session has cost the family $2,500.
Saturdays noon to 3 for the Kim Commando Show, and weekdays at 7:20 for your digital minute. That's Kim Commando on the Ozark's Best News Talk.
News Talk 107.1 The Point weather sponsorships are available for your business marketing plans. Contact Cody or Josh at 255-2548 for more information.
From the Point Weather Center for this morning, we'll have a partly cloudy sky, sunny through the day, high 54. Mainly clear tonight, low 28. Tomorrow's going to be a sunny day, high 58. Partly cloudy tomorrow night, low 38. Saturday, times of clouds and sunshine with the day ending cloudy, high 62. I'm meteorologist Jim Rinaldi, and for more information, visit my1071thepoint.com.
Another year older, another birthday blood. Not when you're listening to the Birthday Club here on 107.1 The Point each morning during the morning show. Proudly presented by Ryan's Family Restaurant. Call in your loved ones, your mom, dad, grandma, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, nieces, whoever, for their chance to be the winner of a great buffet and drink from Ryan's Family Restaurant. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you from 107.1 The Point and Ryan's Family Restaurant.
All right, we're back, and we are joined this morning with Doug Enyart. Doug is the Constitution Party's candidate for the 8th District in Missouri to replace Joanne Emerson, who vacated the seat recently. And so we're having an open discussion this morning about topics, policies, bullet points, kind of conditions that are going on around the country, trying to get a feel for where Doug stands on a lot of these issues. So far, Doug, it sounds, as if you are truly a constitutional, conservative individual, and which I would expect, of course, from the Constitution Party. But, you never know, right?
It's a good fit.
Well, yeah. So let's just kind of continue if we can. We've got sequestration on right now, and we know that the government had given us these dire Armageddon-type promises and predictions that things were going to go bad. Yesterday, news came out that there's a memo out to the USDA that this gentleman asked if I could maneuver or manipulate my budget to, and what are my limitations. And he was basically told that you cannot do anything that will contradict the warnings that we've put out there. So essentially, in layman's terms, what that memo said is you can't do anything that will lessen the impact and the damage because we've promised that it would be there, and now we have to make that prediction a reality. Meanwhile, we've given $250 million to the Morsi government over in Egypt, and we're closing the White House to tours for sixth grade school kids. I got to wonder, what's the madness, and what's your thoughts on, one, sequestration, and two, foreign aid in light of it?
Well, this is largely the executive branch, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to hype things up. They're using emotions to try and sway the public opinion and get what they want in the first place, to get their way. There's plenty of money in the budget to keep on essential services. If they have to drop off the tours of the White House, I guess that would be of minor consequence. But we're talking about 2.5% of what the government is spending. They're spending, I think, about that much per month on interest on our debt. So maybe, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. When I pay my credit card off to get rid of that interest, then I have those dollars that I was losing on interest to actually pay for things. Interesting
Concept on the whole issue of sequester. My way of thinking, it's like having a job that you make $50,000 a year, and your boss promises you a $3,000 raise, and he comes back to you 2 days later and says, "Listen, I can't really give you that $3,000 raise. I can only give you a $2,800 raise." And you claiming that, well, my goodness, I'm going to lose my home and my car, and my kids are going to have to be taken out of school, and we're going to go on food stamps. And the argument, of course, is, well, how did you get along before this raise came up? I mean, didn't you build your household budget to meet the $50,000 you were making yesterday?
Yeah, well, that's kind of like the so-called tax raise when they put the payroll taxes back on the books.
Right.
This is a whole different topic, but it's one that really kind of got to me as an employer. They give the employees 2% tax cut on programs that are going bankrupt to begin with, and this is ostensibly done to stimulate the economy. Well, I didn't see the economy gets too stimulated out of that, and it doesn't really make much sense if you've got these huge programs that are already headed for bankruptcy to stop putting money in them.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about trade programs. There's NAFTA, there's CAFTA, there's the proposed Atlantic free trade agreement, which will probably be called AFTA. I don't know. And then there is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was negotiated over the last 5 years in absolute and utter secrecy. I'd like your thoughts on trade agreements in general.
Trade agreements, you're getting a little bit to the edge of my expertise or knowledge anyway.
Okay.
But I can tell you on a local basis.
It's interesting to hear a politician say that, but okay. I applaud you for admitting that, I'm not up to speed on it, but I will be.
Well, like I said at the outset for your listeners out there, I'm still just the guy down the street. I have access to only the information you have, and some topics have more of my attention on a daily basis than others.
Of course.
Now, on the topic of trade agreements, our government probably needs to be able to talk to other governments about trade, but on a local basis here, when NAFTA was passed, we lost brown shoe, and to this day, this was like over 20 years ago. To this day, the local people refer to certain events in relationship to when brown shoe left, and it went to Mexico.
Right. Okay, let's talk about the National Defense Authorization Act and the indefinite detention proposal portion thereof. Because the National Defense Authorization Act is really only a monetary bill, a budgetary bill. However, they inserted, as you're aware, in the indefinite detention aspect of that in 2012, reiterated it in 2011, and reiterated it in 2012. Your thoughts on the indefinite detention of Americans for committing a quote-unquote belligerent act?
A direct violation of the Constitution. We all have the right to a speedy trial by jury if we are charged by two or more witnesses.
It smells to me of the Alien and Sedition Act. If you the early Alien and Sedition Act. I mean, that's the closest thing that I can draw an analogy to in our historical sphere of legislative, extra constitutional actions. And I think the closest that I can come to that is the Alien and Sedition Act. The indefinite detention proposal allows the government, for all intents and purposes, to hold you until, quote, unquote, the end of hostilities, which, of course, knowing we've had a war on drugs, a war on poverty, a war on terror. I mean, let's be honest, we've been on the war on poverty since the mid-'60s or early 60s, and we've been on the war on drugs since 1925. So, for all intents and purposes, to be held indefinitely without opportunity for habeas corpus or even access to the courts strikes me as a life sentence.
It's a direct violation of the United States Constitution. We have a right to trial by jury as American citizens.
Would you be willing, as a member of Congress, to insert legislative language that immediately bars and bans any violation of the Fourth Amendment rights and Fifth Amendment rights, Sixth, Eighth, I mean, I just keep going, Eighth Amendment rights of individuals who are picked up under the National Defense Authorization Act?
I would do so. If the way you look at it, though, it's kind of redundant. You already have these rights.
I recognize that, but we also have a law in the books now, unless states are independently willing to nullify them, and many have, by the way. I think there's about 14 of them now that have passed National Defense Authorization Act nullification statutes that say if a federal agent comes in here and tries to snatch an American off of our soil, we have the right to capture that federal agent and prosecute him criminally and charge him with a felony and put him in jail.
Yes.
Or
yes.
her.
And taking this a step further, not only the National Defense Authorization Act, but many of the acts, the laws, the regulations that our central government has put into play over many years. We need to reverse the propellers on this ship and start going the other way. We need to start examining how many federal agencies can we eliminate, how many acts, rules, laws can we take off the books, because our government is too large.
United Nations membership. Stay or go?
I'd like to invite them to go over to Europe.
Okay. And what should we continue to? Should we continue to fund it? I mean, let's be honest. We fund 2/5 of it.
Yeah, and
or
the
more.
question is why are we paying for all of this when mostly it's running contrary to the interests of the United States?
Okay. Right to work as a national policy.
As a national policy, that's a state issue. And I had this question yesterday. The fellow was trying to set me up to back unions, and no, I don't. I'm a right to work person, And I told a simple story. My daughter graduated from college in 2010, had a hard time getting a job. She was working 2 jobs. She was working as a receptionist at a motel, and she was clerking at a local grocery store, which was unionized. And they made, the government made her pay fees, not dues, but fees, that were in turn turned over to the union. And
in order to
you're
keep
talking
the job.
about, these are entry-level jobs.
Sure.
And she needed that money to pay for groceries herself.
Sure, I understand. It's hard to afford ramen noodles when you're giving it over to the union. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. Folks, we're listening to Doug Enyart. He is the constitutional candidate for the 8th District here in Missouri to replace Joe and Emerson. He's kind of given us his thoughts and opinions on different issues, and there's so many of them we're having a hard time getting through the list. When we return, we'll try to narrow this list down and wrap the show. Thanks very much. We'll be right back.
The area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry.
Online at westplainspawn.com.
Top of the line, new and used optics from Nikon, Leopold, Burris, Redfield, Zeiss, and Schmidt & Bender. Ask about their selection of binoculars, laser sights, and night vision goggles. With new arrivals every week, the area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry, 1713 West U.S. Highway 160, or shop online at westplainspawn.com.
I know what you're thinking, Bunk. You're thinking, did he fire 6 shots or only 5?
Dirty Harry gets all his ammo from the battery station. John Rambo, you guessed it. He gets his ammo from the battery station, too. So if you need ammo, go to the place where the guys who know about ammunition go, the battery station. They have one of the largest supplies of ammunition in the area. So make sure you're stocked up and don't get low on shells. Go to the battery station at 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains.
Family Fun and Fitness, LLC presents rape and assault prevention classes at Country Cupboard in Licking, Missouri. Men, women, boys, and girls, if you want to know how to stack the deck in your favor in a situation where violence is the only answer, this class is for you. Rape and assault prevention classes are held Monday evenings at 5:30 beginning February 11th and run through March 18th. Class size is limited, so call today 417-260-1006 or register at Country Cupboard, 217 North Highway 63 in Licking.
There is this product on Amazon that is simply going crazy. The banana slicer, almost 2,500 consumer reviews. I've been trying to come up with an ideal way to slice a banana. Use a knife, they say. Well, my parole officer won't let me around knives. Or how about this one? What can I say about the banana slicer that hasn't already been said about the wheel or penicillin? Obviously, just a pure hoax.
Saturdays noon to 3 and weekdays at 7:35 for your Digital Minute. It's Kim Commando on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1.
All right, we are back, and we're joined again by Doug Enyart. Doug is the Constitutional Party candidate for the 8th District here in Missouri. We're getting his opinions, ideas, thoughts, and kind of on a treasure trove of issues which are outstanding right now in the news. And we're going to try to continue with that, Doug, but we've got to get to the big one, which is Second Amendment at some point. And so, with limited time left, I'm going to try to, I think, jump straight to that. I mean, I got a ton of stuff to talk about. The Agenda 21, immigration, balanced budget amendment. The list goes on and on and on and on. Minimum wage on a national level, things like that. But I think what I would like to do is, in light of the Second Amendment issues and where we stand on that, let me start with the constitutionality of two major bills which passed the House and the Senate over the last 80 years. The National Firearms Act in 1934 and the the Gun Control Act of 1968. Now the Senate is opening hearings today to figure out how they can enforce national or universal background checks on the only people that will actually get them, which are the law-abiding citizens of the country. Your thoughts on gun control in general and this issue of universal background checks in specific?
Okay, I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment.
Pardon me, by the way, but so is Chuck Schumer, according to Chuck.
Oh, okay.
So,
well,
I don't mean to
don't disparage me that way.
Well, no, I don't mean to disparage you or even put you into that ilk. But I guess my point is, everybody says I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment, including Barack Obama, and Nancy Pelosi, and Dianne Feinstein. what I don't what they generally do is they all say that, and then then comes the but. So I'd like to hear your answer. You're a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. Go.
Right. I'm wondering what part of shall not be infringed are they confused about?
There you go. That's the differentiating factor. Does the 1934 National Firearms Act and the 1968 Gun Control Act infringe?
I am not intimately familiar with those. Like I said, I'm the guy down the street, so there's a lot of things I don't know.
Well, those are the things that force us to do a 4473 when you go into a local gun store and you want to buy a shotgun for your kid to take him out turkey hunting. You got to fill out a 4473, get a background check. You have to have swear under oath in fear of perjury that you're not a mental defect, that you're not a criminal, blah 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 blah. Those are the things that. The National Firearms Act was the thing which enabled them to ban and limit automatic weapons in the hands of American citizens, short-barreled shotguns, put limits on what you can own, how you can own them, creating a national registry under the NFA or National Firearms Act registry. That whole series of legislative issues that are out there now.
Right, and again, what part of shall not be infringed is confusing to the public, or especially the news media and the people we've elected or the current crop of politicians in Congress. But I think in my opinion, the federal government has failed to do its duty when it has allowed the states and municipalities to pass laws banning handguns, banning certain types of weapons or weapons in certain places, because it's their duty to enforce this amendment that says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Mm-hmm. That means that the central government does have authority in those areas over the states.
Right. So, in other words, turning the tables, the Supremacy Clause actually should apply to the Second Amendment, is what you're saying, and that means the federal government should be interposing itself, if you will, or nullifying state limitations in places like Chicago, places like Washington, D.C., places like New York City, where guns are or your ability to own or possess or carry or whatever is limited. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, you read my mind. Chicago is in violation of the Constitution, and it is the duty of the federal government to intercede on behalf of the people.
That's a flip on the concept of nullification. Yesterday, a number of individuals came out and were talking that the federal government ought to nullify the states' rights on marijuana. In other words, Colorado and Washington State, where they passed it for recreational use, mm-hmm. and that the federal government should nullify those states' passage of the marijuana law. Now, I don't even care I do care where you stand on marijuana and drugs and war on drugs and all that, but it's interesting to see the federal government wants to apply nullification where it benefits them, but avoid it like the plague when it's used against them.
Right, yeah. So we've got the federal government failing to do its duty in places like Chicago with what's very clear to even to everybody, the man on the street, everybody shall not be infringed is pretty clear language. And then on the other hand, we have states and local people trying to enforce the federal law, what is perceived as federal law, who are not authorized, where it says that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. I kind of agree with that. Or sure. Prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Tell me, does your local superintendent or principal work for Congress?
No.
Does he have the right to tell school children they can't use the word God in a school paper?
Absolutely not.
Or tell a student they can't pray at graduation?
Absolutely not. It's interesting how you turn this interview around on me.
Well, it's both. What I'm trying to point out is that we've got people trying to enforce something they are not authorized to do so at the local level.
Sure.
We have the federal government trying to do things, not doing things that they're supposed to for the people.
I'm going to throw this out at you as a last final issue because I think I pretty much, and our listenership pretty much gets your stand on Second Amendment issues. I've recently written a piece of legislation which I'm vetting and passing around to some folks to do some overview on it. And basically, it's a state legislative initiative that would basically nullify all federal agencies acting within the administrative agencies acting within the borders of Missouri. And that includes the entire lot, whether it's the USDA, the FDA, the FTC, the FAA, the FCC. The list just goes on and on and on and on and on. Part of our problem, as I see it, is that 2/3 of all the laws and regulations that are passed in this country are not actually passed by Congress, but are passed by unaccountable bureaucrats who have no accountability to the American people and or even to Congress. And these administrative agencies are basically, to quote our founders, eating our substance. And so I think that by nullifying all federal agencies within the borders of Missouri, and then demanding that those agencies that exist within the state of Missouri administratively must come before Congress and are frozen in stasis until they can come before Congress and show that every regulation that they've ever passed has a constitutional basis. And until such time as that can be done, all regulations are frozen. Your thoughts?
That's quite interesting. I'd like to look at that.
I'll be more than happy to send it to you.
Well, yeah, you've got my email. I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
I would certainly want to look at that. I think it's probably not doable immediately, but
I get it. I'm trying to eat an elephant in one bite.
Right. You're trying. Yeah, I like the way you put that. Yes. What we need to do is, like I said earlier, we need to reverse the propeller on this ship. We've got to start backing off of all these central government agencies. We've got to reduce the number and size of them. We need to reduce as many regulations as we can. Get it down to a bare minimum so that at least the people that we send to Washington to represent us know how many federal agencies there are and what their budgets are and what they do.
Mm-hmm. I'm a firm believer that, and my listeners have heard me say this 100 times, we need people who will go to Washington who are, not politicians, but we need individuals who are willing to go there, do their civic duty for a short period of time, willingly be swallowed by the dragon, to get in there with a sword and begin to slash at the beast from within.
Well, I have spent my life, I'm 56 years old, I've spent my life educating and training and molding myself into being the best professional forester that I could be. And I think I do a pretty good job at it. I have plenty of clients here. But I've served before. I served in the military, I served in the Marine Corps. I'm not sure I want to do this, but I feel like I need to.
I understand. That's why I do this radio show. I'm called by whatever power it is that calls. That's the calling. So,
yeah.
Hey, listen, I want to thank you for your service. How long were you in the Marine Corps, and what was your MOS?
Active duty from 75 to 79. I was a 2531 field radio operator. I spent my last year teaching at the MOS school at Mainside and Camp Pendleton.
Gotcha. Okay. I want to thank you very much. You have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Doug, DOUG, _Enyart, ENYART. And Doug, is there a phone number where folks can reach you if they have specific questions that they want to address with you off the air, of course?
Yes, they can call me on my cell phone at 573-429-7800.
Okay. Folks, that, again, I hope you've got your paper and pen handy. It is 573-429-7800. And, Doug, I want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy morning to join with us. I'm sure that you've got a lot to go do between now and June. I wish you luck in your race. We'll have you back on again if that's all right. I'd like to have you on a Saturday because we almost have two audiences. And I can perhaps have you on a Saturday as well, and then maybe once again before the election. I'm trying to give our listeners the opportunity to gather enough information to be able to make informed decisions. So thanks so much for joining with us today. Have a wonderful day.
Sounds great. You too.
Folks, that was Doug Enyart. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
Well, let me get to the point. FM News Talk for the Ozarks is FM 107.1 The Point. KBMV.
Fox News Radio, I'm Dave Anthony. For detonating a nuclear bomb underground, North Korea faces punishment at the UN. The Security Council will this hour consider new sanctions after that test, so the North is warning it'll nuke us.
North Korea's foreign ministry saying it'll exercise what it calls its right to a preemptive nuclear strike because the United States is pushing for nuclear war anyway.
Fox News Radio's Alistair Wanklin.
North Korea set off a nuclear device last month, but is thought unlikely yet to be able to put one on a long-range missile.
Nearly 3 months after the elementary school massacre shattered Newtown, Connecticut, state and federal officials are letting students in grades 3 through 8 skip standardized tests this month, citing all the trauma. President Obama is reaching across the aisle to pass the SALT. Dinner with Republicans last night, lunch with